In the news this past week. Obviously, we're all aware of what's going on sadly, in Ukraine with Russia. But beyond that, we have seen that the President Biden nominated a judge for the Supreme Court, Judge Jackson. Judge Jackson is interesting enough, would be the first Supreme Court justice since Thurgood Marshall, who retired in the early 90s, that actually practiced criminal defense law. Um, a lot of a lot of the judges have or in the past worked in the capacity as a prosecutor, whether it be a state court prosecutor or a federal prosecutor. For example, Justice Alito was a former federal prosecutor. Justice Sotomayor was a former prosecutor in New York. So we have, and generally speaking, whether it's the Supreme Court or your local judiciary, there's always an overabundance of prosecutors. There's always an overrepresentation of former prosecutors. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am a former prosecutor myself. We believe that it provides a unique experience in understanding a case. However, it should be noted, and a very positive thing, that not only is the new justice would be the first African American woman to be on the Supreme Court should the nomination get past the United States Senate, but she is the first former criminal defense attorney. Her experience, she was what's called a former federal public defender. And a federal public defender represents individuals that are indigent, meaning they're too poor to afford a private attorney, a private counsel. And they have been charged with crimes that are in federal court. Our firm practices, we have a significant practice in federal court all throughout the United States, significantly in the Middle District of Florida, Tampa, where we practice, before judges, along with federal defenders. And federal defenders will defend individuals that are charged with serious drug crimes, gun crimes, wire fraud, bank fraud. And normally it's a situation where the U.S. Attorney's Office asserts jurisdiction because there is some sort of international component or there is commerce that crosses state lines. For example, if with firearm cases, if the gun was manufactured in another state and then that firearm came to Florida and there was some sort of illegal activity or illicit activity involving that firearm, that would give the U.S. Attorney's Office the jurisdiction to prosecute that case. But going back to this judge actually defended individuals. And it's very unique in that sense, because in my opinion, that's a good thing. We want former prosecutors on the bench, but we do want former defense attorneys, because that gives you understand that there's real world consequences to the way the laws are written and the way they are applied before the court. And cases that come before the United States Supreme Court are cases that are major constitutional issues. Obviously, we all are aware of the hot button issues like abortion or issues involving Congress and subpoenas and things of that nature. But really, one of the main things that the United States Supreme Court deals with are constitutional criminal issues. For example, was there a unlawful seizure pursuant to the Fourth Amendment constitutional right? Is there a Miranda rights issue in violation of your Fifth Amendment constitutional right? There's many important rights in the Bill of Rights or the Constitution that Supreme Court judges analyze to see if a particular case or a case or defendant or the prosecutor's office was following the constitutional rights. So I think it's a good thing that we're going to get a judge that has been in a kind of more of a real world setting. She's dealt with individuals and families that have been devastated, or indigent individuals that have committed crimes or have alleged to have committed crimes. So she's going to come with a unique experience. And beyond that, her experience, she actually has family members that were former law enforcement. So she kind of comes from both sides of the aisle. She's going to understand a law enforcement's perspective along with individuals that have been charged with crimes. So I do think it's beyond obviously just the historical aspect of the first African-American female to be on the bench as a great thing, but it's a great thing from a criminal defense perspective that we're going to have, assuming she gets nominated or passes the Senate, we're going to have a nominee that understands how the criminal defense system or the justice system works really in the real world. And lastly, one of the interesting things, as a federal practitioner, a federal criminal defense practitioner, sentencing is controlled primarily through what's called the federal sentencing guidelines. And there is a sentencing commission that basically has come up with these federal guidelines, which determine based on the severity of the offense, the prior criminal history, specific offense characteristics, were there specific aspects of the crime? Was the defendant a leader of a crime? Did the defendant have a firearm or shoot a firearm while they were committing a crime? Things like that determine what the advisory guideline sentence is. So the federal judges will have a range of what a sentence might be. So just use an example, be 6 to 12 months as an example. This judge, the new judge, she actually served on the sentencing commission. So it's very interesting. She's actually been in a real world working as a federal defender's office and dealt with real world issues and the impact of those laws. But she's also helped draft laws and has an understanding of how the advisory sentencing guidelines should be applied at sentencing from a real world perspective, but also from an academic perspective. And so she has tremendous experience from a criminal justice perspective. And I'm very hopeful that she ultimately ends up on the Supreme Court. And it'll be refreshing to have an individual that is not just an academic or that's not just an academic, that has practiced in the real world with individuals that have been charged with crimes and really has a strong understanding of the criminal justice system.